stories from
the cancer
the
support
cancer
group
support group
last
yesterday.
night. Yeah. So we mainly just we did the typical X page stuff that I do, where I give them a prompt and then walk through. This is the critical part about if you're going to story tell. Before you start your story, it's not like you have to think about and go, where's the story going and what's going to happen in it. It's that you have to be present in the scene. And it's based, for me, I do this thing called the X page, where I ask people to imagine themselves in a scene, and then I ask them questions about it. Things like, what are some of the sounds that you can hear in this image? But one of the things I ask them to do is almost like to spin around in the image, and it's based on that thing that happens to every human being, which is you're going through your day and suddenly you smell this smell, and suddenly there's your Aunt Louise's basement.
Right.
So people, and that happens all day long. And I think it's such a, but what's interesting about it is people kind of say, oh yeah, there's Aunt Louise's basement. And they kind of think what just happened maybe was a picture, they can sort of see it. But if that comes back, people will find that they can turn around in that image. They can answer what's in front of them, what's to the right, and what's behind them, and what's to the left. And the best example I always give is of thinking about a car from when you were little, just a car, any car. And so I always ask people, do you have a car in your mind? People go, yeah, I can kind of picture this car. And I say, well, are you inside the car or outside of the car? I'm inside the car. What seat are you sitting in? Passenger seat. So if they know what seat they're sitting in, then I can ask them, where's the light coming from? And what kind of light is it? Street light, it's a street light. So what time of day or night? It's night. And so it's almost like these questions are, you're asking yourself, I'm doing it, but it's asking yourself, and then suddenly at some point it seems that all these things sort of gather together and a story comes from it. But what's wild, because I've been doing this since I was 19, what's wild is it can be the same car, it can be the same story, and it is a completely different story. So we played around with that last night with the group, and I think the thing that was the most striking was when people are writing from that place, and they're writing for a very short amount of time, so 7 minutes. The stories are, they're really beautiful. They're never overwritten. They're never boring. They seem to somehow cut right to the core of what storytelling is. And I think it's because of the limitation, that 7 minutes.
It's 7 minutes.
Yeah, and if you think about it, one of the things as a writer, people always talk to me about editing. My students will say, how do we edit something that we've written? And my feeling is that if you think about the only reason we know about editing is because editing exists, and we do it all day long.
Yeah.
So say you and I are talking, and we think we have 7 minutes to talk about this thing that happened, and suddenly somebody pokes their head in and says it's 3 minutes. Both of us know how to
constrain.
Yeah. We just know how to do it. So it's sort of taking advantage of that and using that 7 minutes as that way of, it just automatically makes a structure. And then if you tell people, what I do is they write for at about 4 minutes, I'll say 3 more minutes. And then just like a little kid, you can't walk into a room where a kid's playing and say, come on, that's it. You have to say 5 more minutes, right? And somehow the stories just naturally conclude. And it was fantastic last night with that group.
And there's no time for the critic voice to enter because you're so busy, you got this limited amount of time, you can't edit and criticize and go over and reread and say, ooh, that's not the right word. You just have to tell the story.
Yeah,
and that's having done these myself with you several times, that's a huge benefit because you're not going to get the perfect word, whatever that is, but you also don't get bogged down in and distracted by trying to go back and find that word. You just keep moving on and tell the story.
Yeah.
And it's like, I know where I want to go and what I want to say, and I'm not going to let that, that word or that phrase, in its imperfections inhibit me and prevent me from continuing it. So yeah, I mean, I resonate with what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, it's also when you think about finding the perfect word, and the question I always say is the perfect word for who?
Yeah.
Like who are we imagining that this story should be for?
Right.
Where are they? And versus this it's almost like a song or something. The way it comes out, it's like a song. It's not like you don't have time to let several of you in.
Yeah.
So and I love it because it's so. I really believe that one of the things that's really interesting about the arts, particularly about stories, is that I really was sitting in that room last night listening to people read, but I was also in the stories. Oh yeah, well this one guy, one of the older guys, his story was, I am with my family. My mother is driving our 1952 Hudson. My father is in the trunk. It's a snowy day holding 2 ropes, one for me and one for my sister, and he's teaching us how to ski. And Mom's driving slowly, and he describes the day, and it was like, what?
You were there.
I got everything. I got to be with my dad, who was sitting in the back of a Hudson. Mom driving, me with my brother. Or this woman who wrote this astonishing story about her mother getting really sick, and all the kids in the family had to be farmed out to somebody else. And she had grown up in a house with a regular kitchen, but where she ended up with a relative was somebody who had an apartment, and they had a really little tiny kitchen with this tiny window. And there was a way that she described this kitchen you just got the feeling of what it was like to be a little kid, to be separated from your family, to have a mom that's in the hospital, and then you're in this strange little kitchen in an apartment building. It was just so powerful. Or this elderly woman last night who, it was a very simple story. She bought a new car. She was super happy about it. It's like in the 50s. 3 days into owning the car, the transmission seizes up, and there are people who help her to the side of the road, and she's just thinking about, gosh, this is a new car. That's the whole story, but I was...
It's everything.
Yeah, well, everybody was there.
Story.
Yeah, so I think part of it is, that the miracle of the story is amazing, but the miracle of being able to almost like I have my lifespan and it's finite, but there are these little accordion areas that show up when other people tell stories.
So you get to experience part of the life you didn't personally experience, but you're vicariously you're experiencing what it was like to be in the story and part of that narrative. Yeah, that's really cool.
Including that extra time that I didn't live.
Yeah.
But somehow I got that
but
extra
now you're part
time.
of it.
Yeah, I mean, I really think it, it's one of the things I'm so interested in is how this stuff changes one's sense of time.
Yeah.
But this idea, we were talking the other day about how a comic strip, one page can span 5 seconds or 50 years, right? But I really do think it expands the amount of time that you have on Earth. Not the real seconds, but some other kind of time.
Huh.